Well, hello and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. A bit of a tricky drive on the way in this morning, wasn't it? It looks like it's starting to clear up now. The sun's starting to peek through the clouds, but on my commute this morning, I was on the road around 7:30 this morning, and it was dark, and it was pouring rain, and I will give kudos to the group of traffic, the gaggle of traffic, the collective of traffic that I was moving with along Highway 102 coming into towards Bears Road. Everybody kind of got it, which is rare. Everybody was like slowing down, and some people were putting their four-way flashers on, and everybody was kind of taking it easy because it got to the point where, at least in a couple of those spots, there was some hydroplaning happening, some water splashing up on the windshield. People were having trouble seeing, and they did what they're supposed to do. Now, that didn't happen in other areas, I've been told, and it was a bit of a tricky commute for others, but it was wild. And we've had the discussion on the program in the past about the time change, right? We've had that discussion, and driving to work in that dark. Now, if the time would have changed, and I'm still not a big fan of it, it would have been an hour lighter. So maybe it's a little bit more safe driving in. But it was certainly a wet one out there, and I know that many of us have maybe not forgotten. I don't think you ever forget, but haven't had a lot of experience this year driving in rainy conditions, right? And it was a bit tricky. I know that the water is welcome. I don't think anybody's complaining about it. I know that it is going to do a lot to help some of the situation in particularly Lake Major and other dry areas in the province. I know that many of you that are on wells are looking to the skies with smiles today and hoping that this continues. I have been told that we need days like this for several days in order to get us back to where we should be and to get us out of these drought conditions, but it's a start. We'll see where we're at tomorrow. I'm going to bring on our weather specialist, Alistair Alders, tomorrow on the show to run down sort of what that was and how much we got and what it means and all of that stuff. But it's still kind of raining, so we'll wait and do that tomorrow on the program. Not avoiding it. In fact, it's been a topic of discussion since I arrived here this morning, and that, of course, is those Toronto Blue Jays. How about that, right? It doesn't get any better than a Game 7. Simon says it often in his sportscast. Sport fans across the country say that it's the best words in sports. But when you're in it and you're down, it's anxiety-causing. I was a little worried. The Jays didn't look like they were going to take that game last night. Right up until the seventh inning, and George Springer, the guy that everybody said was too old and shouldn't be on that team anymore, we're paying him too much money. That guy knocks one out of the park. The Jays take the lead. The bullpen comes through, and they manage to hold off the Seattle Mariners and advance to the World Series. Doesn't that just sound awesome? 44,770 people were at that ball game last night in Toronto. Just think about that for a minute. If you've ever been to Toronto, you know how crazy it is down there when there's a hockey game on. But when Rogers Centre fills up to its capacity, and did you see the videos after? The Toronto fans were having some fun. I saw a guy standing on a street corner with somebody standing on a lamppost beside him, and the guy below him was playing the bagpipes. Very cool. Not necessarily climbing the poles. That's illegal. But very cool that the Jays have advanced to the World Series. The open hour goes at 11 o'clock today. I'm wondering if you've been caught up in this Blue Jays success. Will you watch the World Series or maybe even listen to it here on the radio station? 1992 and 1993 was the start of my love affair with the Blue Jays. Didn't watch a lot of baseball before the Blue Jays made those historic runs, right? We saw the very first World Series game played outside of the United States ever in 1992. And then, of course, who can forget Joe Carter, right? That's when I started to follow the Jays, and it's been a tumultuous affair, I will say, over the years. But that's what it really spurred it in my belly to become a Jays fan. Playoff success tends to bring out and bring more attention to sports. Remember the Raptors when they made their run to the championship? Will you watch the World Series or find something better to do with your time? Something we wanted to discuss as we throw open those telephone lines today at 11 o'clock. What else is going on? Inflation. Holy smokes, inflation. It's up. It's up right across the country, 2.4% according to Stats Canada. Here in Nova Scotia, we're up to 2.7% annual inflation rate. That up from 2.2%. That's the highest inflation rate in Atlantic Canada. New Brunswick comes in second at 2.3%. That's a huge jump. They're at 1.6% the previous month. Now at 2.3%. Prince Edward Island saw an increase from 1.1% to 1.7% inflation. And over in Newfoundland and Labrador, they're at 2%, up from 1.3%. Another significant increase. The biggest increase or the most amount of inflation is in the province of Quebec. They're at 3.3%. Ontario, 2%. Alberta is up even, where there's a bit of a different tax regime there, and people get more money in their wallets. 1.9 up to 1.4. Saskatchewan, 2.6%. So Nova Scotia is second in the country, and not on a list that we want to be second in the country on. Inflation affects everything, right? So now what happens with the Bank of Canada? I'm sure that all of the people that are in those high offices are studying these numbers very closely, and we could we see another drop on the prime rate? If you listen to Mortgage 101 in October, when I sat down with Clinton Wilkins and we talked about it, and he's of the opinion, and he was correct about the last reduction, but he is of the opinion we will see 2 additional reductions of 25 basis points between now and the first quarter of next year. So what does that mean to the home buying market? What does that mean to those of you that have variable mortgages? Or those of you that have perhaps fixed mortgages and are in the process or getting ready to be in the process of renewing that mortgage? And what does that mean for the economy? Normally when we see lower interest rates, it never signals a good thing, does it? When we see interest rates drop, usually the Canadian dollar drops, usually the economy is in bad shape. And we got a budget coming in November. There's a lot of factors out there that are going to hit everybody's pocketbooks. We'll keep a close eye on it here on the program. And one of those groups that is likely to be hit by this is those in the rental market. And that's a lot of people here in Nova Scotia, particularly here in Halifax. I'm holding my hand up. You can't see it, but I am, because I'm a renter, and so is Vanessa. We know that there's more capacity coming onto the market. We know that means more vacancy. I was driving around on the weekend going to look at the fall colors, which I hope didn't get hit too hard with that rain we had and the wind we had last night. But there were a number of apartments that had sandwich boards out front that they're looking for tenants, which we haven't seen for a long time around here, right? I'm hearing from people that write me on the email saying that their buildings and others that they are perhaps watching or looking at that are also offering incentives to get people back. We know that there's a significant reduction in the number of foreign students that have enrolled this year at the universities here in Halifax, and I'm sure that is having an impact on the rental market. We know the rent cap is scheduled to come off at the end of 27. That's at 5%. I'm not going to lie, folks, that's got me petrified. It really does. If you saw the op-ed that was published by Kevin Russell, who's the executive director of the Rental Housing Providers Nova Scotia, it's hard to say. They're asking everybody to just kind of stop attacking each other and let's get together and work on a solution. He has long said that the rent cap is responsible for these high rents. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to have a conversation with Kevin Russell, the Executive Director of Rental Housing Providers Nova Scotia. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Go Jays, go. We're back after the break. All right, welcome back. This op-ed came across my desk, I think it was yesterday or the day before, from our next guest, and it reads, this is the opening paragraph, "Now, the only way that we can solve the housing crisis in Nova Scotia is to work together. Unfortunately, many politicians and self-appointed activists attack the very people who are providing much of the housing in the province. Since 2020, bad policy after bad policy has made access to housing worse." Very pleased to welcome to the show today the author of that op-ed piece, the Executive Director of Rental Housing Providers Nova Scotia, and that's Kevin Russell. Kevin, how are you?
Good, Dan. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. Kevin, who should the activists and the media and the politicians be turning their anger at if we shouldn't do that to the landlords that are the front line here?
Well, Dan, I don't think they should be returning the anger towards anyone. I think it was very clear in the article that it's time to work together and focus on increasing supply, and we're willing to work with anybody that wants to do that. We're open, and we have we have the data to support what should be happening in the province, and so again, no one should be angry at anyone. Let's just work together and get this issue resolved.
How can renters and landlords work together to increase capacity, Kevin?
Well, it's it's really between government policy and the rental housing providers, and with input from the renters. I mean, we can see that this is this housing crisis was driven by government policy, and it's time for changes to policies to make it to increase supply in the market, and that's going to take a lot of tough talk and reflection on how best to handle the going forward to increase the supply greater than what it is. And who's been impacted the most by this housing crisis from the rental housing provider's point of view is the small mom and pop family managed type rental housing providers who have been leaving the business because it's financially unsustainable for them to remain in the business. So they are selling their properties. I mean, since 2020, over 3,000 units have left the market. Well, at the same time, we know there's 10,000 units coming to market. It's still, those units are going to be offset by what's left the market. And I keep hearing that the smaller members are continuing to sell their properties because of the financial unsustainability of the product, mainly due to the rent control and not being able to recover their costs.
I think the people who've lost their apartments and some of those people are living in tents right now, Kevin. I think they're the hardest hit, aren't they?
Oh, they've definitely been hard hit, and it's very frustrating. We understand the frustrations, but the only way out of this crisis is increasing supply. We see it time and time again. You look across Canada, you look at the unregulated markets in Alberta and Saskatchewan. I mean, supply is over 6%, and rents are much lower than they are in HRM. And if you look wider than that, if you look into the unregulated markets around North America and the U.S., rental housing supply is booming and rents are falling, and it's becoming more affordable. And until we can get that supply to that point, Nova Scotia will struggle in resolving the housing crisis.
Kevin, in your letter, you said the rent cap doesn't work. Let's use my rent as an example. I live in an area with a lot of apartment buildings. My rent's gone up to the cap each year that the cap has been in place. It's 5% now, right? A similar apartment across the street, same layout, same number of rooms, bedrooms, bathrooms, that kind of thing, renting about $1,000 a month more than I'm paying now. Now, if the cap comes off, what's to stop my landlord from raising my rent $12,000 a year, or 71%?
Again, Dan, it's the point is we have to at some point get the supply increase. I mean, when you look at the markets where there's oversupply, rents have stabilized and they are coming down. We have to get to that point, and we must have a market that promotes building supply up. And it must happen quickly, because the longer this remains in this area of restrictions for building supply, we will continue to struggle.
Kevin, you mentioned fixed-term leases. That's obviously been a topic of discussion around the community here for some time. You say that's the medium, and you said the medium and small-sized operators that are impacted by this the most, and that thousands have lost their roofs or have roofs over their heads because of those fixed-term leases. But if we see a spike in prices when that cap comes off, could those thousands be out of a home to allow landlords to make a quick renovation and then get into the market at a higher price?
Not if the supply is there, Dan. As long as the supply is there, but you'll see rents stabilize. I mean, fixed-term leases have enabled thousands of Nova Scotians and immigrants and students the ability to have housing, and so it's a very important part of the ecosystem of the rental market. And without fixed-term leases, there will be an increase in homelessness for sure, because they provide a way for people who have no credit history, who have low incomes, to be able to gain tenancy within apartment buildings. So it's an area that helps renters and not hinders renters. The fact is there's no data to support the use of fixed-term lease. We don't know how many fixed-term leases are impacting tenants, but we do know from data that currently there's residential tenancies filings over 2,500 are for non-payment of rent, and the people who are filing or being filed are living in the most affordable housing we have. We have to find a way to help them.
Kevin, capacity is the solution, right? You said that a number of times here. Do we have to, or should we be relying on the big guys? I'm looking around town and I'm seeing these cranes all over the place, right? And apartment buildings being built and opening all the time. Or do we need to focus more on some of those smaller or more medium-sized buildings that you were talking about earlier?
The market works best when both sectors of the industry are working well. The need for the smaller landlords are slightly different, but they need a market that is friendly to them, so they would be encouraged to invest into rental properties. I mean, currently, if somebody wants to get into the rental business, you're probably looking at $1 million just to get a duplex. And so you're looking at and only be told when you go into the rental business that, well, the government's going to tell you how much your rents have to be. So there's no incentive for investment from the small investors to get into the rental market. And so as long as those hindrances are there, and you'll see less investment in rental properties, and at the same time you're seeing more and more small providers leaving the business.
Outside of a rent cap or rent controls, Kevin, what role should the province play in this housing crisis?
Well, at the end of the day, I mean, they should be taking a leading role. They should be listening to all parties. They should be considering the data that shows what works best in the jurisdictions in Canada, in U.S., and in Europe, and in other places, and come up with a real solution to solve the housing crisis. And again, it's all on increasing supply.
Where are we at now with vacancy, Kevin? Do you have any new data on it?
Well, there's no official data. I can tell you, I believe from what I've been hearing, and this is just from my vantage point, is that it's probably closer to 3%, 3.5%, but that could be temporary depending on, again, how many small landlords are leaving the market, which will start to begin to tighten the inventory again. But it could stabilize for a while because of the new inventory coming onto the market. But until we can fix the overall issues impacting supply, it could just be a temporary a pause to the marketplace.
In your opinion, is the rental market, at least the price-wise, overinflated? The reason why I ask you that question is I did some digging before I came on the air today, and rents here are almost comparable to places like Montreal and Toronto, which are bigger urban areas. Are we overinflated now?
Well, the rents are what they are because that's what's the cost to build. The rent that was required to build the buildings and to finance the buildings. So the rents have to, for the newer developments, have to be at that price point for them to be able to meet their financial commitments to their funders. So that's why the rents are elevated in the newer properties. But in the older properties, you're seeing some moderation in the rents. You're seeing some discounting, and of course, you're seeing rental incentives.
Kevin, as always, I appreciate your time.
Not a problem, Dan. Again, thanks for having me on.
That is Kevin Russell, the Executive Director of the Rental Housing Providers of Nova Scotia. Got an email from Colin during the interview. Said, "Hey, Dan, you had mentioned about the rent cap coming off. There is a small possibility it won't, but let's imagine it does. Anyone who is a tenant right now should look to see what the market rate is and how your rent compares. If your rent is below market rate, I think it would be prudent to start acting like your rent is at market rate. For example, if market rate's $2,200 a month and you're paying $1,800 a month, then let's take the difference each month and put it into a separate bank account. If you can't come up with the difference, then take that as an opportunity to prepare this coming year and be able to afford it." He says, "I can almost guarantee that if the cap is removed off, landlords, anyone below market rates, is going to adjust as soon as they can. Might as well use this time to prepare. Worst case scenario, your rent goes up and you have a year of savings stocked away." And that is from Colin. Colin, I would agree with you, and I think that's probably smart if you can afford it. But let's use my example. That's $12,000 a year increase. That's a 71% increase. Who does that hurt? It hurts the long-term renter, many of which are seniors who can't afford a $12,000 increase in their rent. I'm using my building as an example. There is a number of seniors that live in that building, been there longer than I have. I think that if that rent cap comes off, there's going to be a lot more people in a lot more dire straits moving forward. We're going to stop and take a break. Blake is going to update us on what's going on in the news, and on the other side of it, Movember. It's right around, can you believe it? It's right around the corner. We're going to dig into what it means and why Canadian men's health matters with the country director of Movember Canada, Todd Minerson. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Well, far be it for me to disagree with the President of the United States. But I think that residents south of the line have been clamoring for many more things for many more years than a ballroom at the White House. Sometimes I just shake my head. It's really all I can say. Like, really all I can say. With the government shut down, right? With their economy not being as good shape as the president thinks it is, and his focus is on building a new ballroom. Time to move on to more important things. There's some sobering stats that came across my desk, and I don't want to be a downer for you here on a Tuesday, but these numbers are mind-blowing. 75,000 Canadian men and boys die before reaching their 75th birthday. On average, Canadian men die 4.5 years earlier than women. 75% of suicides in Canada are completed by men. 1 in 8 Canadian men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer, and 1 in 30 will die from it. This is why events like Movember, I think, are so important. You know, growing a handlebar mustache is silly for most, but it does get men talking about their health, which is, I think, is paramount in this campaign. Very pleased to welcome the country director of Movember Canada to the show. That's Todd Minerson. Todd, how are you?
I'm great, Dan. I'm glad I still have a voice after the Blue Jays game last night, but it's amazing to talk to you today about the hairy season and men's health and all things Movember.
Right. This is a campaign that's been on for some time now, and I remember when it's back in its early days. It was my line on it was an opportunity for men to get together and chat, maybe over a beverage, and talk about their prostates, which we don't normally do, right? But this has grown, and now it's a focus on men's health in general.
Yeah, that's correct, Dan. This is coming up on 19 years here in Canada, and our challenge always has been, how do we help men live happier, healthier, longer lives? And it started in the prostate cancer world, and thanks to Canadians, we've contributed about $110 million to prostate cancer research in this country. But if we are really true to that mission about how to help men live longer lives, and those sobering statistics that you shared at the beginning, there's more issues than just prostate cancer that we have to be concerned with. So we gradually took on mental health, suicide prevention. We also, obviously, if you think it's hard to talk about your prostate, how about your testicles? So we took on testicle cancer as well. And, what we've learned is that there's a lot of things that are preventing men from getting good care and taking care of themselves. And so we're really expanding the remit now to all of men's health and trying to get to that better place for all of us and all the people that care about us.
Now, this campaign, obviously, by its name, is Movember, and it encourages us to raise money and awareness by growing a stash.
Yes. Lots of ways to get involved. The mustache is the classic form. I'm sporting my preseason mow right now, much to the chagrin of my wife and daughter.
Preseason? I didn't know we had a preseason. Hang on. There's a preseason to this?
It's like the opposite of the playoff beard in the Movember world. You kind of grow it before, and then you shave it off on November 1st.
Oh, got it. Okay, yep.
There's other ways too, though. We know not everybody wants to or can get permission to grow a mow. So you can take part by moving for health. We encourage people to try to move 60 kilometers in the month of November. And, mowing your own way, the passion and the creativity of the Movember community is unbelievable. There's a big run there in Halifax. There's a gaming conference and event in Halifax as well. There's hot wings contests, Battle of the Bands, polar bear dips. It's quite astounding to watch 50,000 Canadians come together and, as you said, raise funds, but also raise awareness for men's health.
It's mowing your own way. That's pretty cool. And again, it's about raising money, but it's more about, just getting that awareness out, right?
That's right. What we found is, like in that study that you were referring to in the beginning, there's a lot of things that are preventing men from kind of getting the care that they need, and delaying care because you're afraid or because you're not sure or because you're uncertain. Some of these things can really just be diminished by having the conversations, having the hard conversations, whether it's with your buds over a beverage or with your kid or with your coworkers or whatnot. And, it's amazing to us, Dan. We go and do all these health talks in businesses and workplaces and schools all across the country. And it universally, somebody will come forward with a story saying how having that conversation about their health literally saves someone's life in their world. You know, whether it's getting screened for cancer or speaking up about their mental health or having the guts to kind of go and get help. It really can change a life, and not just one life. You know, it changes all the people, all the families, all the children, all the coworkers that care about that guy. Men
have this stubbornness about them, right?
I think there's a bit of stubbornness, Dan, but there's also a little bit of fear, and there's a little bit of maybe lack of good role modeling as well. Like, what does it look like to be an active participant in your own care, to get up and make those appointments, to make sure that you follow up on things? And I think the stubbornness sometimes is a little bit of a mask we put on for some of the other things that are hard about dealing with your health, especially, you know, sensitive things like your mental health or, you know, any real challenges you're having with things like cancer and stuff like that. So stubborn, yes, but I think it's easily overcomable if you just, you know, understand how important it is to start to have those conversations.
Education piece aside, this raises money, and where does that money go?
Yeah, we're, you know, incredibly blessed by this community in Canada. As I said already, like $110 million over the years to prostate cancer research. We're funding mental health and suicide prevention work. We're funding prostate cancer health equity grant right there in Halifax through University of Dalhousie. There's support we're providing for Indigenous men in communities around the country, which are facing, you know, suicide rates anywhere from 9 to 15 times greater than the rest of the population. And some exciting new things too, like we're partnering with the Western Hockey League to provide mental health resiliency training for all of their players, coaches, and even parents. And it's things like that that are only possible with the help of all of those follicles, all those crazy Canadians who are out there helping us raise money and awareness for the work.
All of those follicles, I love it. All right, so those out there that want to get involved in this and help to do all of and accomplish all of these goals, how do we do it?
Yeah, we'd love to have you sign up at Movember.com. There's a ton of information and resources there, not only about campaign and how to get involved and how to fundraise, but resources and tools for having conversations around mental health, statistics on men's health, and also, you know, lots of information about the impact that you're helping make across the country.
When we have to, obviously, it starts November 1, right?
That's correct. But, you know, we do work all year round on men's health, but this is the hairiest time of the year, and we're pretty pumped.
Hairiest time of the year, I get it. Todd, I appreciate your time, and hopefully we raise more money this year than we ever have in the past.
Thanks so much for your support, Dan. It was great to talk to you today.
That's Todd Minerson, who is the country director for Movember Canada. I can't stress it enough, and it's very interesting. I mentioned that I had gone away a couple of weeks ago when Lisa filled in for me, and I went to a reunion, a military reunion, and we were all sitting around the table sharing our various ailments and broken bones and so on and so forth. And one person told me that they went and got screened for prostate cancer during a Movember event, or as part of a Movember event, and that person got it early. And that's the key, right? It's not often that men will sit around and enjoy a coffee and talk about their health. In fact, I don't think it happens very often. I don't think it happens with people, period, right? But men, regardless of what Todd says, I think it's just male stubbornness. We don't want to admit that we're fallible, right? It's going to be a great event, and I encourage you to participate. I encourage you to support those that are participating in Movember this time around. Time to stop. It almost feels wrong. This next segment almost feels wrong, but we're getting into the holiday shopping season. I know. But the criminals have been gearing up for it, and they're going to prey upon us this holiday shopping season. How to protect yourself. A cybercrime expert from Aviva Canada, James South, will be joining us after the break. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Looking out the window, seeing the sun after the rain that we had this morning, and it doesn't look like Well, I'm sure we lost a few, but there's still lots of color in the hills around Halifax, which is a good thing. We know that that Halloween is right around the corner, and Vanessa and I are planning to do a special thing for the Halloween edition of the program, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But that involves shopping, and Halloween involves shopping, and Black Friday's not that far away. And I know that many of you take to your computers, to your tablets, to your phones to try and take advantage of the Black Friday sales. And when we do that, when we enter into the cyber sphere, into the cyber economy, the potential rises for us to fall victim to cyber criminals. New data, this number is almost mind-blowing. New data from the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre shows Canadians lost a staggering $638 million. Think about that for a minute. To cyber fraud in 2024. These criminals are getting better. These criminals are getting smarter. These criminals are using better tools, including the AI, to trick you and steal your money. So how do we prevent that from happening? Because we don't want to lose our money, do we? Cybercrime expert from Aviva Canada is James South. He's on the phone with us today. James, how are you?
I'm doing well, Dan. How are you doing?
Good. These scams that emanate throughout the year, but we're getting close to the holidays. They're getting better, right?
They're 100% getting better. As you mentioned, they're using new tools, using AI. They're getting smarter. They're learning from their experiences, and they're finding different ways to find vulnerabilities in the system. Speaking from experience where I live in Ontario, last year our school board was hit to try to target information on parents. You'd buy pizza day for your kids online and you put your credit card information for the school board. So they're trying to attack different soft targets. They're really trying to expand. They're not just going after large corporations. They're looking at all the kind of the other soft targets out there and using the technology to find vulnerabilities and unfortunately, like you said, try to steal your money.
We had our power utility hit here by a cyber attack and data stolen. So Nova Scotians are very aware of this. That all being said, James, it continues to happen, right? People fall victim to these things every year.
Yeah. They try to pressure you. They try to find different ways to get information, get familiarity with you, from whether it's taking email information, telephone information, credit card information, and then they sell it, unfortunately, on the dark web to bad actors who then will try to target you. And when they do these kind of phishing scams, the various scams they do, they're not necessarily trying to hit just one person. They're doing it en masse. So, they steal large amounts of information, like you mentioned, at the utility board, so thousands and thousands of people. And if they are successful with even 1%, it's a very profitable venture to them. So they're really getting sophisticated and they're hitting everybody en masse to try to, lure a couple people in. And that's why it's really important to be careful with your online data and find different ways to protect yourself should you become the victim of one of these unfortunate attacks.
$714 billion annually across the world. That's a lucrative market.
Yes, and it's attracting bad actors all over the place, whether it's organized, disorganized. But when the money's like that, it brings a lot of bad actors, and that's why at Aviva we have this product here that you can attach easily to your home policy or home insurance policy or your tenant or condo policy, just like any other thing you would insure, maybe your wife's ring or any kind of expensive item you'd want to insure. You can attach it to your home policy for a very nominal fee and have peace of mind that you do have protection and a place to go for advice. So if you're not sure about what happened or what you should do, we also provide advice and 24/7 support through our cyber experts on our claims side.
Cyber insurance, I've never heard of it before.
Yeah, it's a relatively new in the personal space for everyday customers because of this growing need in the consumer space for protection. It's been around for corporations for some time because that's where cyber bad actors really focused to begin with, but they've expanded and really are targeting individuals. And that's why we've introduced this product here that we're really proud of. It's a very comprehensive product that, as I mentioned, you can easily attach to your home insurance policy for a very small fee that gets added to your monthly payments, and provide you, the peace of mind. You want to be protected against a flood, you want to be protected against a fire, and really more so now, you want to protect your family against these bad actors that are trying to target your information online.
James, the best cure is prevention, and we're getting into that shopping season, right? And it's Black Friday and all that stuff right around the corner. What should I be looking for as a cyber consumer to protect myself from these so-called bad actors?
So never click anything quick. Take your time. Anything you don't recognize, don't click on. If you ever feel pressured, if you ever get a random phone call or anything like that, where you're kind of being rushed, say it's from the bank saying you had an unrecognized withdrawal, and they don't want you to get off the phone, whenever you're feeling pressured for something, they're usually trying to take advantage of that feeling, that heightened sense of urgency. Only go to trusted websites. It's also easy, just always use two-factor authentication. Never use the same password multiple times. And when you do have a password, don't add just a number to the end of it if you're going to change it. Things like that are really simple steps you can take. In addition, if you'd like, as I'm recommending today, seek out coverage through your insurance policy. We sell a great one here at Aviva Canada, where, you get that extra protection. And also you can always come to us for advice. If you're unsure about what you need to do, you can always call us when you have purchased our product.
It's the old adage stands true, right? If it sounds too good to be true, likely is.
Always. It always is. You always have to take steps to protect yourself and be skeptical when you get any of those emails. I mean, we are gone from the days where you'll get tricked by that Nigerian prince that happened to have lost access to his bank account. The criminals now are much more sophisticated, and we have to step up our game too to protect ourselves and our families.
James, I appreciate your time.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
That is James South. He is a cybercrime expert from Aviva Canada. It's interesting. We jest about the Nigerian prince scam, but I still get that. So it must work, because if it didn't, they wouldn't waste their time, right? $700 billion worldwide. That's a staggering amount of money. We're getting ready to stop, take a break for the news. On the other side of it, we're going to open up the telephone lines today. Maybe do something a little different. Of course, it's the open hour, and you can talk about whatever it is on your mind. That's what the open hour is. That's what the idea behind it is. But I'm very curious today to get your thought on the Blue Jays. Now, I've mentioned it a couple of times, and not a lot of people want to talk about it, but now they're in the World Series. This is it. This is the epitome of baseball prowess. Blue Jays haven't been here since 1993. Are you going to watch the World Series? Maybe you're a casual maybe you're not a baseball fan at all, but you're getting caught up in all of the hype behind the Toronto Blue Jays. Are you going to watch the World Series? Are you going to cheer on the Blue Jays? I don't think that this could come at a better time for this country, to be quite honest with you. With the country kind of reeling still from the ongoing, I don't even know what to call it anymore, between Canada and the United States. There's been a lot of interprovincial angst. There's been a lot of jawing back and forth politically, which that kind of happens all the time. But can Canadians unite behind a sports team? Are the Toronto Blue Jays Canada's team? 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Will you watch the Blue Jays? Will you watch the World Series? And do you think that the Toronto Blue Jays are, in fact, Canada's team? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Just something you might want to talk about. If you got something else on your mind, we'll take those comments too. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We are back in minutes. Well, as you just heard in the news, the Toronto Blue Jays have captivated the country. They have made it to the World Series, first time since 1992 and 1993. Let's not forget those back-to-back wins. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, that was the beginning of what has been a tumultuous love affair with the Toronto Blue Jays for most of my life, right? I remember the 92 series well. I remember the 93 series well, and everybody that was alive at that time and watched it can tell you to this day where they were sitting, standing, cheering from when Joe Carter hit that home run to walk off that game. It was one of those heritage moments, right, that we see on television, and I think that this could be the same. Obviously, we're all pulling for the Blue Jays to win, and let's not discount our opponent. The Dodgers are a tough team. Shohei Ohtani and that crew are well financed, I will say, and they are going to be a tough opponent. All that being said, though, it's still we have to play the games. That's why we play the games, and the Blue Jays get the first two at home, and those start on Saturday night. So. Let's go, Jays. My question to you, of course, this is the open hour. The lines are open, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I want to be very clear. You can talk about whatever it is you want to talk about on the open hour. That's the way we do these things, and we've done them for many years that way. But I'm curious as to where you're at on the Blue Jays. Are you watching it? Have you watched it? Will you watch the World Series? The Toronto Blue Jays, Canada's baseball team, ? On the world stage again against the Dodgers in the World Series. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's start the conversation with Dave. Dave, how are you?
Very good, thank you, Dan. Let's talk Blue Jays. My goodness, how exciting has that been?
Right.
Now, good for the country. I would say people are jumping on the bandwagon.
Oh, no doubt.
That aren't even baseball fans. But we got something to cheer about here, which we badly need. And when things get tough, sports can be a very nice distraction.
Absolutely.
For folks, we saw that during the Depression years. Now I'm going back a long way. People used to pack the baseball stadiums and wondered, well, where are they getting their money? What are they doing? Well, when you're without work or what have you, it's a distraction. It's a pleasure, I suppose, and this is a wonderful thing. But you can also thank your company, Rogers, that's paid a lot of money and put into the payroll of the Blue Jays. I was looking at the payroll because obviously we blew away the Yankees. They got a big payroll. I think they sit number. I think number one is the Dodgers, I believe, are up there.
Yeah.
Yankees are up there. The Phillies. We are number 5.
Right.
Now I say we as in our country, our team here, the only team we have, with the Blue Jays, number 5. And Vlad, they signed for $500 million, I believe, over a period of time.
And
so
there was lots of hand wringing and consternation when that contract got signed, right?
And it's a good thing they're where they're at right now, because otherwise they'd probably be, And remember, the Jays were in last place last year, if I'm not mistaken, in the East. And so quite a story for sure. And I'm following it. I don't have cable. I don't stream anything. I basically watch YouTube the next day, or I stay out late and listen to podcasts or some radio if I can. But
games on the radio right here, Dave. Every game will be on the radio.
And if you haven't listened, because I have a camp and I don't want electronics or what have you, I will listen to a radio that's barely getting the reception where I'm at. But there's nothing better than listening to a radio baseball game broadcast.
It's the way it should be. I've said that many times. It's just there's something that I don't know if it's the nostalgia behind the whole thing, but it really is. I find the best way to take in a ball game is on the radio.
It really is. And if you have a good play-by-play and a color person that can describe the play, you can just and if you're familiar with, of course, Fenway Park, and I had the luxury of actually having a tour around there. I haven't seen a game, but I went in. We had a tour around the place, and it's just a marvelous, just an iconic place. And you can sort of envision things when you're listening to the broadcasters, and it's a lot of fun that way. It really, really is, and it makes you think. But yeah, like I said, Rogers has done a very good job. I mean, they paid a lot of money for these guys, and you know what? Don't forget, we did get by the Yankees, Aaron Judge, and we made them not necessarily look bad, but we blew by them. And I think at this point with the Blue Jays, they have nothing to lose. The only thing is we played 3 more. I say we because it is kind of our team, right?
Oh, for sure.
3 more games than the Dodgers have, and they beat a formidable team in the Brewers, and they've been, basically sitting there and waiting, licking their chops, I suppose. But, I think we may be a surprise, as in the Blue Jays, with the Dodgers. And if I'm not mistaken, I think we have home field advantage, Dan. Is that correct? Does it open up at
American
Rogers
League
Center?
has the advantage, so we're starting in Toronto on Saturday. Yep.
That's due to the All-Star game, is it not, if I'm not mistaken? There you go. There you go. Can I just add a little something with the bike lanes?
Sure, very quickly. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I do some travels on a main artery, which is the Bedford Highway. It does have a bike lane there, and I rarely see anybody on that bike lane, to be honest with you. It's a main artery, and if anybody is crazy enough to go through the Windsor Exchange to carry on their route as far as a cyclist, I think they'd be suicidal and crazy, because I don't know how you would connect into, say, Barrington or whatever to get into the city. But the fact is, it's a luxury thing, the $100 million, whatever it's going to cost, in my opinion. And I think we need to nip back on the luxury expending. It's a luxury, in my opinion. It doesn't seem to be working because traffic is constantly backed up there anyways. Like I said, I don't see many cyclists. That's just my opinion. And I think these people who have bleeding hearts for the cyclists, and we need to do this and that with the city, I honestly think when you're carrying a huge debt load and the government does borrow money and you have interest on top of that, look at our federal deficit. It's going to be our next generation and that are going to be paying for the $1 trillion deficit and the billions in interest that goes on top of all this. People don't realize that. And I think we should be transparent with our budget and our accountability as far as a government. That's what we want. I think most Canadians would be. Let's not be silly and think, well, let them spend whatever we have to take care of our people. Well, it's the people paying the taxes. And when it comes to council, Dan, one more thing on ending, we vote them in. Get out and vote, do some homework before you vote these characters in, or your mayor, or your prime minister. Do some homework. That's all I have to say about that, because we are responsible for where we're at right now as far as politics go. Anyways, Dan, enjoy the series.
Thank you, sir. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. This is the open hour. Lines are wide open, folks. If you want to get on, here's an opportunity. Again, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Just got an email from Dan C., who writes this. Wow. Elbows up. Canada's team. One Canadian-born player, Vladimir Guerrero, born in Montreal but claims the Dominican Republic as his home. 17 players American, others from other countries. But let's boycott Costco due to American ownership, although all employees are Canadian. You hypocrite. Have a nice day. Did I ever say, Vanessa, to boycott Costco? Ever once? I said, I've stopped shopping there, but I've never told anybody to boycott Costco or anything. Dan didn't think I was going to read that on the air, I bet. But there it is. Call me a hypocrite. If I'm a hypocrite, I'm a hypocrite. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The open hour continues after the break. Welcome back. 902-405-6000 is the number. 1-877-801-8255, if you please. We're talking, obviously this is the open hour. We talk about whatever you want to talk about, but I'm more curious about what your viewing habits are going to be for this upcoming World Series, now that the Toronto Blue Jays have made it to baseball's top game, at least in North America. Will you watch the Jays in the World Series? 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Got an email from Chad, and I will put a caveat on this that Chad, sometimes his emails drip with sarcasm, I will say. It reads, Dan, everyone knows the best way to listen to a baseball game is through Morse code. Well, if you know somebody that can do Morse code, Chad, and do the whole ball game at the speed that the ball game goes, that'd be a skill. I'd probably listen to that. I'm kidding. But it is really cool to listen to it on the radio. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome David to the program. David, how are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure. What's on your mind?
Well, just regarding the baseball, I do want to say just two things to add on. First of all, the way I understand it, I may be corrected, is that the Blue Jays get the home field because they had one more win than the Dodgers. It comes.
I
down
thought it
to
was decided on the who won the All-Star game. Isn't that the way that works?
Not anymore.
No?
No.
Did that change?
Stopped. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the change this year. So actually, it only goes by the best record.
Oh, really?
So there you go for the Blue Jays. That's one win over the Dodgers. Yep.
I stand corrected.
Otherwise, Seattle would have been in L.A.
There you go. I stand corrected.
So no, just FYI.
Sure.
But anyway, I agree with you 100%. Baseball on a radio is unbelievable. If you have a good color commentator and you think back to the Vince Scully days.
Right.
Phenomenal. I remember growing up in Montreal and the Expos, and we had a guy named Dick Van Horn, and he was the play-by-play guy for the Expos. Phenomenal. And of course, you're driving in a car, you pick up a ball game like on your station.
Mm-hmm.
Great way to spend 2 hours.
Absolutely, and I think it engages your mind. I get more into it. If I watch it on TV, I find I get distracted, right, with all of the stats and all of the the shots in the crowds and everything else. Whereas if I listening to it on the stream or not on the stream on the radio, I feel like I'm more engaged in the game.
Well, that's exactly right. And so even when I work, have the opportunity to put a baseball game on TV, for example, during the playoffs, I'm working and have it in the background, listening to it. So I don't pay attention to all the noise, but listening to the action. And then, of course, which is really nice, you can just pop up and see the replay quickly if you had to.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So nice. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know that was the FYI. And yes, the Blue Jays are the team of the nation because they are the only team. It's like the Raptors. So everybody can,
I was going to ask you that, David. It sounded like you were an Expos fan during their tenure, and the guy that used to occupy this chair long ago, Rick Howe, was a diehard Montreal Expos fan. I don't think he ever really got onto the Blue Jays bandwagon, but you have.
I'm not really my number one team in the American League is Boston.
Oh.
And I will tell you, my number one team in the National League are the Dodgers.
Oh.
And that goes back to my mother. I got to tell her, say it, because she was a Brooklyn Dodger. She's seen them.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And don't forget, back in the days in Montreal, that's where Jackie Robinson broke in.
Yep.
And we had a place called Delormier Downs. And that's where he actually went, and the Dodgers had them as their farm team. And so then when the Montreal Expos came along, I liked the Expos, loved the Expos. Great team. They got burned in that year of the strike, but it's unfortunate. But, they were good. Toronto was my number 2, so I'm not going to say anything. I'm happy anyway. So that's the way it goes. Fair. But anyway, I am a baseball diehard. So, yes, I will be paying attention.
David, I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Okay, I'm going to set the record straight here. I got a couple of emails. I misspoke. I said that the series starts on Saturday night. It does not. It starts Friday night in Toronto. I had the Mooseheads conflict in my head. That's why, and I'll explain that in a moment. So, World Series Friday night, Toronto. Jays have the home field because of their better regular season record. I was under the impression it was still had to do with the All-Star game, but it does not anymore. So to get all of the correct information out there, Friday night Toronto, and then Saturday night as well. And there will be a conflict with the Moose game on Saturday when they play Cape Breton. And as we have done throughout the playoffs, we will bring you the best of both worlds. We will bring you the Blue Jays game over the radio, over the air when it starts. I think they're all 9 o'clock starts. And then the Mooseheads, which will have started earlier, will move to our stream. So like I did during the Division Series and like I did during the Championship Series when there was a conflict, I had the computer on with the Mooseheads game. I had the radio on with the Blue Jays game, and I was in sports fan utopia. And you can do the very same throughout the World Series. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Nicole to the show. Nicole, how are you?
Good morning, Dan. I'm well. How are you?
I'm well. What's on your mind today?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I'll answer your question about the Blue Jays, and
sure.
I will probably be watching the game. I haven't watched a lot throughout the season, but when I was living in Montreal, they used to play preseason games at the old Olympic Stadium, and
at the Big O.
Those at the Big O, and I remember the run in the 90s and being really excited about that.
Right.
So it's going to be a little nostalgic as well, I think, to revisit that time. But today I have two things on my mind. So the first thing is I just want to follow up on my conversation with the counselors yesterday, and I appreciate Councillor Cleary correcting what I said about the campaign contributions and how those limits are set. And I just thought it was interesting that as he mentioned, it's not legislation, it's not statute, it's not regulated by the province, that it was actually council that decided it was the $3,000 limit that they should be adhering to.
I think that all was born out of the, I think it was the second, or was it the third time around that Mike Savage ran and had a whack of money left in the coffers, and I think that's where that came from.
It was something like that. So I thought it was interesting that they've set the $3,000 limit, and now it's the solicitor and council going, yeah, that's negligible. So I thought that was just an interesting. I appreciate the clarification, but I think it made me go, a little bit more, knowing that they set the limit and they're now kind of saying, it doesn't, it's not really a conflict. It's too little to be a conflict. So I think that that's worth kind of paying attention to as we go forward and other things arise. But yesterday you were talking about the HRM budget. And to go back to my days in Montreal, I was living in Montreal when the Charbonneau Commissioner report came out, and I don't know if you remember that, or
that was where all the corruption got exposed, right?
It was through the contract. It was through the construction contract.
Yeah, and the mafia ties and all that stuff, right?
And the mafia ties, but it was a big deal, and no one really ever came out with like a dollar figure of how much that cost the taxpayers. But some of the estimates were in the tens of billions over an extended period of time that these particular contracts had cost taxpayers. And so it really had me thinking, when we're looking at the HRM budget, we can look at maybe where we need to trim, and we can look at specific things. But under the infrastructure that's required to run the municipality, we have to look at who's being hired, what are the contracts, how much is being paid, and what happens when we peel back the lens of procurement and look at that instead of just specific things and saying we need to slice and dice. Because I feel like it's the contracts that are sitting under everything that are problematic. And I remember someone calling in a few months ago talking about a fence that went up in downtown Dartmouth that had cost something like $750,000.
No, I think that was the fence at Victoria Park that they borrowed it to fence it off after they moved the homeless encampment.
Right. And it's like, okay, that seems expensive.
Yeah.
And if we're looking at the crosswalks and we're looking at the bump outs, and are we paying the best rates for what we're getting? And how are these contracts being generated? And, I've worked in some interesting places, and I've worked in the construction industry in this province, and I've watched how some of those deals are done, and the backroom conversations that happen, and the understanding, the silent understanding that seems to happen between departments and contractors that allow some of these things to move forward. I mean, we just had an audit from the Auditor General looking at the provincial level how the nursing home contracts have been awarded over the last 25 years. So we know there's a procurement issue here in Nova Scotia. We know there's a massive issue. So when we're looking at the HRM budget, it would be worth getting a little more granular to look at how these procurement contracts are going through. And I'd be curious to know or hear from people that maybe are actively bidding on municipal contracts and maybe never getting them, or people that work in those industries who are actively bidding on these tenders and what their experience is with that. Because I think, again, patterns start to emerge, and then we start to see, yes, the dollars are being spent, but are too many dollars being spent? Are they all going into the same pocket? Are these contracts being vetted as well as they should be? Are they being renegotiated? Like, what does that look like? And I think that's where we really start to see the dollars and cents shake out. But the Charbonneau report was really interesting.
Appreciate the call, Nicole.
Interesting. Yeah.
Up against the break. Have a great day. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The open hour continues after the news. Welcome back. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. It is Tuesday. This is the open hour. The lines are open, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. The open hour, a chance for you to talk about whatever it is on your mind. We are having a discussion today on the Blue Jays and their American League Championship Series win last night, advancing to the World Series. to take on the Los Angeles Dodgers. That begins Friday night at 9. All the games are 9 o'clock starts, as I understand it. That'll be interesting for the Dodgers market, won't it? Because that's like, 4 hours difference from here? 4 hours difference? Anyway, it'll be fun to watch. And my question to you is, will you watch or listen to the Blue Jays in the World Series? If I remember correctly, and let's go back a year or two, 1992 or 1993 was a long time ago, but I do remember it being must-watch TV during that time. Now, we didn't have the same options that we have in 2025 than we did back then, but it seemed that the country united behind the Blue Jays on their push to their 2 World Series championships. My question to you is, are the Toronto Blue Jays Canada's team? And will you watch the World Series? Or will you just find something better to do with your time? 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Or you can chat about whatever it is on your mind, just like Carlos is going to do. Carlos, how are you?
I'm good. How are you then?
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, just to answer your question, I don't really watch a whole lot like baseball or hockey, but when it comes to a Canadian team beating American team, absolutely, my friend. I'll be right there, 100%.
Good.
Single that. There is nothing more pleasurable than to watch that. So, yes, I'll be watching. But, yes, just to talk about the inflation rate that we just seen it in news, and one of the most worrisome is the food inflation has increased 4%. So if I may suggest something, maybe the Premier or someone is probably listening, why not use the infrastructure of the Nova Scotia liquor store to open up a section where people can find basic food staples? So you can start with perhaps seafood, which has been affected by the tariff, right? So on the weekend, when I go get my wine for Saturday night, I then see a new section that says Nova Scotia food. And then I see all those items that are being produced here, some which I understand clearly are from here. And I'm sure a lot of people will take that choice and would also get that profit margin out of the price, right? Because it's the government, you need to pay the bills, of course, but you don't need to make such a large profit margin as a basic company. So that's an idea that I thought, because it's increasing. There is no question, and you need to keep an eye on this, and that's perhaps a way out or a way to try to deal with this food inflation. Use the infrastructure of the Nova Scotia liquor store and open up a section where people could see it. Okay, these are food staples, seafood, fresh, frozen seafood, right?
So they could almost roll it into their Nova Scotia Loyal program that the government's been out trumpeting around.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that I do remember once you did that interview with this lady that was selling sausages somewhere in the valley, right? And I thought about it, I'm not going to drive there just to help out this person. But if I see at Nova Scotia liquor store a section that says these are Nova Scotian products being sold, food, absolutely I would buy from it, 100%. And I have a feeling that many others would as well.
Carlos, I appreciate the call, sir.
Thank you.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I've said numerous times that I think in order for us to fix the economic situation that we're in Nova Scotia, when it comes to housing or when it comes to the grocery store or when it comes to all of these economic pressures that we have on us here, that outside the box thinking is something that we need to do. Now, is putting Nova Scotia Loyal products into the NSLCs going to help fix that? A lot of the NSLCs, and I appreciate Carlos' comments, but I'm looking out the window here, out over across the street to the Atlantic Superstore, and there's a NSLC outlet that's literally attached to it. So I don't know how that works, but if it's focused purely on Nova Scotia products and those Nova Scotia loyal products, and I know that some producers out there will say there are problems with that program, but it may be something that is you're more incentivized to purchase if you see it in a different environment, right? Now, I don't know if NSLC would want to give up any of their shelf space because, boy, when you go into those stores, they're certainly jammed full of stuff, aren't they? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255 is the numbers. The lines are wide open, folks, if you want to join the conversation and talk about whatever it is you want to talk about, or if you want to let us know your thoughts about the Toronto Blue Jays heading into the World Series. Here's a perfect opportunity to do that. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. This just came across my desk, and being with our very close attachment here to the Navy, the Federal Auditor General, Karen Hogan, says many living spaces that are used by the Canadian Armed Forces members across 3 bases are in poor physical condition and ripe for overcrowding. In a separate report, Hogan warns the military is not recruiting and training enough members to meet its operational needs. National Defense doesn't always know why prospective recruits abandon their applications. Well, I know many of you out there are yelling at your radios right now because my experience, and it's been a minute since I was in the forces, but I can distinctly remember living quarters, particularly on-base living quarters, were not the best. I'm trying to be politically... No, they were awful. They were... Let's just face it, they were terrible. They had mold. They were leaky. They were beat up. And that apparently hasn't changed, according to the Auditor General. It was why many would try to find off-base housing. And the PMQs, those are, for those of you who don't know, those are Mary quarters. It's where families would move in. And I'm assuming it's the same as it was back in my day, that there were PMQs on base that you could rent. And you could move your families in if you had kids and that kind of thing. PMQs weren't in much better shape. So it apparently hasn't improved much in the days and weeks since I had last pulled on a pair of combat boots. Anyway, and recruiting, we know that that's a problem, right? We absolutely know that's a problem. But I will offer my opinion to the Auditor General as to why recruits are abandoning their applications. Because it takes too Jeezly long to get through the process. I've heard stories about people waiting months and months and months and months. Once they've gone through the testing and there's a long list of things, physicals and all kinds of things you have to go through, aptitude testing and that kind of thing. They are waiting months to get into the forces. And if we are hurting so bad for replacement, I don't want to say soldiers, replacement troops, is that better? I don't want to offend our Navy friends. Then why does it take so long? We saw the military trying to modernize itself over the last year or two, loosening dress regulations, right? Grow your hair longer, you could grow beards, all this stuff in an effort to try and get people to join. But when they're trying to join, and it's taking several months in order to get into the system and just off to basic training, that's a problem. And then when you graduate and you get through your, I don't know if they still call them your qualifications, your QL2s and 3s. I know there's different codes for them now. But when you get through your trades training and you're a single person and you have to go live in those single people quarters, they're awful. I don't know why anybody should be surprised by this report. It's been happening for years. We're going to stop, take another break. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Chatting with Vanessa during the break about the Auditor General's report out of Ottawa that says that the military housing is awful. I can remember now, I'm going back even before the Jays won the World Series. So we're going back a year or two here, but I can remember being on temporary duty at a base in Saskatchewan, I won't name it, and living in an H hut. Those that you out there will know exactly what I'm talking about. And the urinals in the bathroom were the old school ones, the ones that went kind of 3/4 way up the wall and were all the way to the floor and were all piped together with a big tub of water that was above them. You didn't have to pull the chain. It was gravity fed, but it was, I think, if I remember correctly, it was the vintage of like 1939 or 1940. Now, I get it. It's a urinal. It has a purpose and does its thing, but that was pretty old infrastructure, I'll say. Anyway, as I said before, and I don't know if it's the same here. I would imagine it's modernized now. I've been through some of the living quarters here, and they're much more modern than in my day. But I would imagine that there are some horror stories out there. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's go to the phones. Welcome Kevin back. Kevin, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you, Dan?
Good. What's on your mind, sir?
Well, first of all, I'm a long-time Blue Jays fan. So I watched the games from, I was over in ships, Navy ships.
Right.
When we won in 92 and 93. So
we're of the same vintage then, Kevin, because that's when I have my experience with living quarters in the military.
Yeah. Well, being in the Navy, the single living quarters, they never really bothered me too much because I got the heck out of that as soon as I could.
Right.
And then and a lot of the time we weren't home anyway. Right.
Well, yeah, Navy's different, right? You guys are on the ship a lot.
Yeah. So what I really called about, you had said about outside the box ideas for the economy and all that stuff. So is what happened. This is a little bit of a story. I pretty much claim that in Guysborough County there is hydrogen, and we know there is in Apple River. And here's how it goes. On March 21st, I sent an email to the Premier, which I don't think got by his gatekeepers.
Okay.
So detailing how and where exactly coordinates in Guysborough County there is like almost guaranteed a hydrogen seep, which if you know anything about white hydrogen, that stuff's valuable. Really valuable.
I never knew that. Hey, Kevin, I don't doubt you at all, but I thought that hydrogen was produced with water. I didn't know that it occurred naturally.
Yeah, it does. It does, and there's a few places in the world. And then on the very next day after I sent an email, a company called Pumet announced that they had found hydrogen at a lesser parts per million down in Apple River area.
Okay.
And they're both on the same fault, although they're, 150, 200 miles apart. But on fault lines, that's kind of irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, if the Premier's listening, go back in his emails and check, because there's like a place with copper, zinc, tin, iron, diorites, which are iron, salt, and heat at 160 C.
Wow.
In a sub-level ground. So
sounds like you better stake a claim on that spot, Kevin.
No, he can't, because here's what the reason why the gatekeepers probably kicked it is because it's inside, just inside a wilderness preserve.
Okay.
But it's underground. You can
access it from outside.
Drill into it.
Right.
You can access it from just a little bit of horizontal drilling, and you don't even have to access it to find out if it's there. Then you come outside the wilderness area and search there. And if it's one place and it's an Apple River, that's two in the province small like Nova Scotia, and then we got fault lines everywhere. I would say there's a pretty good chance of it. And then that stuff is worth I don't know. Last I read out in Alberta, it was like $5 a liter. When regular blue hydrogen, which is made from natural gas, is like $1.50. So,
well, I appreciate you sharing, Kevin. Hopefully they're listening to you.
Yep, thank you.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Not a geologist. I'm not a chemist. I don't know how it works, but I'll tell you what, Dr. Rob's going to be in here right after we have the news at noon here, and I will maybe ask him what and how hydrogen occurs naturally. I always thought it was a process, and maybe it's just because I didn't take a lot of chemistry in school, but I thought it was just a process and moving molecules and gas from water. But I certainly stand to be corrected on that. 902-405-6000. Let's welcome Chris to the program. Chris, how are you?
I'm not bad, Dan. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind today, sir?
Well, I wasn't going to call in today, but I just wanted to follow up for a minute or two on something Nicole had brought up. Same thing that I've brought up for quite a while now is the procurement of goods and services in HRM. Mm. I think that's a big area to look at as far as cost cutting is concerned. You can imagine, to give you an analogy, if you can imagine if all of a sudden 50% of Halifax's employees walked off the job, quit, went away, and they needed to replace those employees. How long, if they put out an unemployment call, how long would the lineup be to get those jobs?
Oh, it'll be around the block.
Exactly. Same thing with contractors that they deal with. There's dozens and dozens of contractors out there, small and large, that would love to be able to get in on the contracts and the work for HRM because it is a big pile of work. You're guaranteed your payment. There's the whole deal. It would be good contracts. I don't believe that anyone in HRM, staff or counselor for that matter, counselors I don't think would know how to do it, but has actually gone to any of their suppliers, especially the major ones, and said, look, I'm just pulling this number out of my hat, we spent $20 million with you guys last year. We have the same budget this year, but we got to cut back on things. We need a better price. Now, are you as an employer or as a contractor, are you going to sit there and say, nope, that's it, I'm not going to budge on my price and potentially lose $20 million worth of business? I think there's room there for cost cutting and so on as well. I ran a company back in the 80s, and a private company, obviously, and we did a lot of work for the then Halifax Housing Authority on painting and maintenance of their properties and stuff. And my prices were so much better than what their own staff was able to provide in the way of the cost of the project that we were just too busy. A few years went by, I was just too busy, couldn't get enough employees to handle it. They spent $1,700, from what I'm told through sources I have, $1,700 per gay pride crosswalk painting. Now, that's not intersection, that's per crosswalk. Surely to God, there's somebody, if they want to paint them, fine. I mean,
yeah, and that comes up when you mentioned that before, Chris. Is that like what's the cost of painting a white one as opposed to a pride one, right? So like it's kind of an unfair comparison if you say it costs $1,700 to paint that because they're going to paint it anyway, right?
Well, they got to paint it anyway, but I'm sure it doesn't cost $1,700.
Well, yeah, but you see where I'm going with this, right? Like the cost of that white paint is expensive too, right?
Oh, that's right, but it is cheaper. And as far as crosswalks, since we're on that topic, I suggested this to Way Mason back in the day, and he was going to follow up on it. Never ever did. When they were going through a few years ago, you perhaps remember, everyone was talking about crosswalks to make them more visible to drivers and
the zebra striping and all that stuff. Yep.
I told Way on your show, or on Todd's show, on one of the Monday morning segments, I said, just go out to the Halifax Shopping Centre, look at how they have their crosswalks done up, alternating blue, sort of a fluorescent-y type blue, and white. You can see them from a mile away.
Right.
They're very, very visible. Oh, he wasn't aware of that. Oh, I'll go out there and check that out. Maybe that's a good idea. It does make them very, very visible, but he never followed up on it. But the costs and stuff in the city have run rampant. We all know that, and I think they should open up their tendering process to make it more available to contractors, both small, medium, and large, to bid on projects and stuff, because I'm sure that there's savings out there to be made on the procurement of goods and services that the city uses, and it's in the tens or probably hundreds of millions that they spend annually for that kind of stuff. So I think that's where they should be looking as well. and they're just not doing it, whether they don't have anybody that's capable of doing it, or it's just easier to say, oh, well, ABC company's always had it, so we'll just continue to go with them. How much do they actually, what efforts do they actually go to try and get better prices for goods and services?
Right.
I don't think they're going to the lengths that they could to save the money, and every little bit they save adds up to that 40 to 50 million that they all claim we need to save, or they need to save as such, so that they can keep the tax rate flat.
Chris, I appreciate the call.
Thank you, Dan.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Commit that to memory, because we're going to do this again tomorrow. Don't forget, tomorrow's Wednesday. So Dr. John will be here from 11 till 12. We'll do the open hour from 12 until 1. Stopping down, taking a break for the news, and on the other side of it, it's time for Science Files. Dr. Rob Thacker will be here to answer your science-related questions. We're back right after the break. Welcome back. Oh, boy, it's Tuesday, and that means it's time for Dr. Rob Thacker to join us in the studio. Dr. Rob, welcome back, sir.
Oh, it's always a pleasure.
I know you're a photography fanatic.
Yeah,
you must have been going crazy over the last week taking pictures of all those beautiful fall colors.
So not that much. It's been something where I simply haven't had the time to go. Photography, when you take it really very seriously, is something where you have to be in the right frame of mind
and have lots of money.
I won't disagree with the sense that a lot of good camera equipment is very expensive. Yes. That's very true.
And I say that because I'm a photography guy too. But glass is expensive.
Glass is expensive. Yeah, lenses are expensive. But I find that to really see things that people don't normally see, you have to be in a very sort of like open frame of mind. And it's midterm season right now, and so work is kind of preying on my mind. And
see, it's not just the kids that go through the stress in midterms; it's the professors too.
I was just I doubt anyone from my class is listening.
Well, they used to.
Well, some of them did, but I've got a new one now. I get new classes every year. That's a pretty good thing actually. But it was there's a few nerves on Monday, but the midterm's done, and so moving on.
Now, I didn't give him any foresight that we were going to talk about this, but Dr. Rob, I think you and I talked about this late in the summer, that with the drought conditions that we were having here in Nova Scotia, we were starting to see the trees turn early.
Yeah.
And there was some concern that because of that, we weren't going to get just a
strong
spectacular display this year. But that has anything
proven
but the
to be
truth.
Wrong. Yep.
Holy smokes! I know this is cliche, but I don't recall in my 15 or 16 years in Nova Scotia seeing colors like this.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I've never seen reds this dominant. Like I know we've had years when the yellows have been spectacular, but I've never seen that I remember. I mean, my experience in Nova Scotia is going back to 2007 now. I don't remember seeing reds quite like this before.
Just pop right off the tree.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely stunning. And I'm like no rain, no wind, no rain, just let it stay on the trees.
And you got it all last night.
Yeah, so we got a little bit last night. Yeah, that's true. But still some trees, especially there's still a few maples that haven't turned, which surprised me. And so there's still going to be a little bit more red yet.
We had a caller earlier on the open hour, Dr. Rob, that was talking about hydrogen and hydrogen deposits in Nova Scotia, and was describing to me what I do believe he called white hydrogen, and that it occurs naturally and it's found underground. And he says that there are two deposits of it in Nova Scotia, one somewhere in Guysborough County and the other in Apple River.
Yeah.
What is white hydrogen?
Okay, so when you first said it to me, I was sort of like struck by all of the colors of hydrogen that are determined by the processes that make it. So I'm like, oh, is this some new sort of method of making hydrogen that I haven't heard about before? And not really. This is underground hydrogen that is created through literally an underground chemical reaction that's going on, and then the ability to actually have a sort of like rock cap that will store it and keep it, because hydrogen is a tiny, tiny molecule, right? I mean, one of the challenges of actually transmitting it is that if you put it into regular natural gas pipelines, it will brittleize the metal because the little protons in the hydrogen molecules are so small, they'll just go off into the metal matrix and brittle it. So I find this amazing, having rocks that can actually contain the hydrogen, well, presumably there is a timescale over which it will eventually leak out, but initially they can contain it for, long periods of time, then that I find kind of surprised. So I went and looked up. I didn't know this. I went and looked this up. So the U.S. Geological Survey has estimated there's between a few billion and a few trillion tons of this stuff embedded within the mantle of the Earth, which is a very, very large range, right? That's a factor of 10,000 almost in impossible numbers. But the estimate is there could be as much as sort of like 5.6 trillion tons, which is a lot of hydrogen. Now, getting to it, I'm sure that's going to be a challenging question, and being able to recover it effectively probably is pretty difficult too. But
the caller mentioned something about Alberta and that they're actively mining it, for lack of a better term, or drilling it, I guess, in Alberta. So there must be a process for it. But I would imagine that once you put a hole in that rock with those molecules,
it's coming out. Yeah,
it's coming out now, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to stick around.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Maybe it's another resource in resource-rich Nova Scotia that we can take a look at and see if we can sell it to, what is it, Germany that wants hydrogen?
At some point, Germany is satiated with hydrogen. But anyway, no, I'm just curious about this one because it's unusual to see a factor of 10,000 in estimates of something. And that suggests to me that we really don't have a good handle on the geological processes that contribute to trapping the hydrogen like this. And interesting, let me put it that way.
902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. I read a story earlier this week about land space and beginning its final preparations for China's first orbital launch and landing. You mentioned this last week that you thought the Chinese were going to be the first to get to put more boots on the moon and just to start to build stuff there.
So China is a really interesting, in a really interesting situation in terms of its space program development. It's encouraging a lot of commercial development internally, and in particular, this always amuses me. Because of the success of SpaceX and some of the failures as well, but they have a number of commercial companies in China that are actively looking at landable boosters, right? And so I've jokingly said, look, SpaceX may be leading right now, but I fully expect in 10 to 15 years it's going to be Chinese companies that are leading this development. And so, yeah, they have a number of smaller startups at the moment, but bearing in mind the Chinese funding system is a little bit less sort of, how can I say, policed. So if there's something that's really good, then you can guarantee that there will be government money flowing to it. So over a period of time, you can expect to see a lot of commercial rocket technology development coming out of China for sure.
Colonizing the moon? Or are we just going to build stuff there so that we can say we can live there? What's the end game?
So the moon is just not a good environment to work in, right? And I think there's a growing recognition of that. I mean, people sort of like, oh, what's there on the moon that we could go and mine? Look, I really don't see much value in this because you've got to get it back to the Earth if you really want to profit from it, unless you're doing things up on the moon that use its in situ resource utilization, to give its full technical term. Unless you're doing that, then there's really very little to be gained by sending things back to the Earth because it's very difficult to send large amounts of mass back because you've got to get it through the atmosphere and slow it down, right? So that in general is particularly difficult. So the moon, for me, I'm not that set on the moon. I mean, it's a good place to go and learn about living in outer space. I think that's true. If things go wrong, you've just got a couple of days to get back, which is a good lifeboat to have. It's not like Mars, where if things goes wrong, you ain't getting back in a hurry, right? You're waiting for the next orbital period, and then you've got a 6 month to 8 month trip back. So I think the moon does have that benefit, but in terms of really having lots of resources that can be used, I don't think it's a great place to go.
Mars, 6 to 8 months, you say, to travel to Mars. And I know that there have been studies done with humans being encapsulated for that long. That has to be one of the
you couldn't put up with me for 8 months, could you?
Well, there isn't many people that, nothing against you, Dr. Rob, but there isn't many people I would want to be in that close of quarters with for that long a time. But then I sit back and think about some of the submariners, particularly in the nuclear subs in the U.S. military, that are already kind of doing that. So that must be one of the big concerns is the human component of getting people to Mars.
But as soon as you said that, right? I mean, people need to know that the mental health of submariners is a real issue.
It is.
The military has studied this for decades, right? So it's something that people are all too well aware of, the things that can go wrong when
things get a little bit tense down in the sub, they can surface and get to some sunlight. You can't do that on the way to Mars.
So there have been a number of studies done on this. So NASA has some published studies on the amount of space that you need, and it's quite significant. It's basically every individual for a trip to Mars needs the size of a container, like a truck container, literally to live in terms of supplies, free space for them to be in, and so on. And that's a lot of space. It's not like a capsule going to the moon where you can shove a bunch of people in just in a small space for a couple of days and you're okay, right? It's completely different. And so that's one of the reasons why Musk's Starship vessels are so big, because they're going to need to be big to actually give people enough space. Right. And so that's it's a real and genuine challenge. But the way you can actually make steps towards making it easier for people to live in that environment is to give them more space.
Our friends in the Navy are listening. Well, hey, look, we live in a little berth on the ship, but you can get up and walk around on the ship, right?
Yeah. You're still feeling gravity, and I think that is a big thing. People may tend to forget about the fact that being in zero gravity is going to do a lot of things to your body over a long period of time. It's just not good for you. And dealing with that I don't think that's trivial. I think that's a stressful thing to deal with, especially if you know you're going back into a gravitational environment. Like, okay, Mars's gravity is 1/6 of the Earth's, but there's no hospital waiting for you at the other end.
And that leads me to my next question. You go through that 6 to 8 months in space, in transit, and then you're going to land and hopefully safely, and then you're going to live in this environment. Do we know what kind of impact that would have on a human being away from the Earth for that long?
So that's an interesting question. I mean, we've done all of these sort of like Mars studies on the Earth where you put people into habitats for a long period of time and so on. I'm personally of the opinion that once people actually get there, the sheer realization of what you're doing will actually serve as kind of an uplifting moment for people over a fairly long period of time. But
something to keep your mind occupied.
Yeah, and I think that's true, because you're going to choose people who are doing this for sort of like they really want to do it, right? And so I think that will be kind of uplifting. There'll also be people who will be psychologically tested for depression and things like that, although you never know what scenarios can bring those kind of issues up. But I'm actually somewhat optimistic that once people get there, they'll actually be okay. I do think coming back is going to be a massive downer for people, though. Right, because it's not like coming back from the moon 2 days and you get all the adulation. You're in that thing coming back for 8 months. Right, that's got to be difficult.
I don't like the 2-hour flight coming back from Toronto. Never mind 8 months flight, right?
Yeah, sure. No, it's actually very, very difficult. I mean, it's even longer when you think about it than people sailing to North America for the first time. Right, even longer than that. Right. So it's quite a significant feat.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Science Files with Dr. Rob Thacker continues after the break. All right, welcome back. This is Science Files. If you have a science-related question, here is your opportunity to have Dr. Rob Thacker answer it. We try to stump them sometimes.
Or I was going to say, or maybe not. Or maybe I learned something, which is always fun for me.
It's kind of what scientists, the way the scientist mind works, right? 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Kevin's a first-time caller, Dr. Rob. Welcome, Kevin.
Hello.
Your question for Dr. Rob, please. I can hear you.
Yep.
Yes, I was just wondering if there's any benefit to having a telescope on the dark side of the moon, and if a creator would make a natural dish shape to help create one. That's it.
Oh, it's like you've set me up with the fastball in the perfect place. I can swing for the breaches with this one. Absolutely. There have been many, many studies on the potential benefits of having telescopes on the far side of the moon. And it's good both from the perspective of radio telescopes and from optical telescopes. With optical telescopes, there may be better places, like maybe at the poles of the moon or something like that. But for radio telescopes, because you would literally have this shield from all of the radio interference from the Earth, it would be a incredibly good place to put a radio telescope. And like, I don't want to say my colleagues in radio astronomy are salivating at the thought of it, but there have been so many proposals, right? If we could make this happen at a reasonably cheap way, like people have suggested, like literally dropping things onto the moon, little radio telescope antennas onto the moon and building arrays and so on. We really need to connect them together. But anyway, so long and the short, yes, absolutely, it would be great to do that. In terms of having a crater and utilizing that to sort of build something like a liquid mirror. So Paul Hickson at the University of British Columbia, he had a research group that was looking at liquid mirrors for doing exactly that. They came to the conclusion, yeah, that would be good. And one of the things we have a problem with when we build these things in the atmosphere is they get little ripples over them from moving in the atmosphere, but you wouldn't get that on the moon, right? Because you have no atmosphere. So yes, lots and lots of reasons to put telescopes on the moon if we can afford it.
That's the big question, is the dollars, right?
Yeah, it is. And so okay, so I'm on record, everyone can hear me and so on. I half expect at some point, if the SpaceX/NASA moon landing is successful, we may see SpaceX turn around and say, look, we have the capacity to put 100 tons on the moon, right? What can we do in terms of something that benefits humanity with a telescope facility on the moon or something like that? So that's a really interesting thing. The only problem with that is then you have to have humans there if things go wrong, right? I mean, people say, what about James Webb? Yeah, okay. That's a very, very expensive space telescope. I mean, that's an $8 billion space telescope. So we could do something a bit cheaper as long as SpaceX paid for the launching and everything, and that would be an awesome facility.
What would it enable us to do, Dr. Rob? Would it enable us to see further? Would it be better definition?
So the key thing about the moon is the shadow, whether that's the light shadow or whether it's the radio shadow, right? And so with radio in particular, I mean, I'll say that probably more people talk about the benefits to radio than they do the benefits to optical, because you can always put something shielded up in space, which is exactly what James Webb is, right? But for radio, the fact that you have all of this shielding makes the moon just an amazing place to go and do it, right? It really does, the far side of the moon. So that's really what we're interested in with optical. Because you're out of the atmosphere, you don't get all of the twinkling that we get within the atmosphere. You don't have to have adaptive optics to take that away. So then you can have this massive mirror and you get full resolution from that, right? And that would be just stunning. I mean, so we would love to have a big survey telescope on the moon. That would be totally amazing, right? And so, yeah. You can see how much I want a telescope on the moon.
He's not excited about that at all, is he, folks?
I mean, so people should know. I've participated in what's called a couple of decadal plans for Canada, or one in its review. And so people just sort of throw out their most amazing ideas they have for astronomical facilities. And so people always bring up putting things on the far side of the moon.
Great name for an album cover.
Wasn't that Dark Side?
Dark Side of the Moon. Well, Far Side of the Moon. Same thing, right?
No,
Dan, not even close. Email question for you, Dr. Rob, comes to us from Alan. It says, hey, Dr. Thacker, let me read this properly. There is no such thing as zero gravity. Isn't that right?
That's kind of how pedantic are we going to get about it? So when we talk about zero gravity of things in orbit, the only reason why they have very, very low gravity is because literally they're falling. Right, so they're falling in a gravitational field. And so you might want to say, well, the gravity is still there, right? They're just not feeling any gravity because you're falling. So it's very much a functional issue. If you're saying, is there anywhere where there's zero gravitational field, I can say, well, if I go into a frame of motion where I'm falling in a gravitational field, then locally at least I won't feel that gravitational field, right? So it's a very relativity question, actually. And so locally you wouldn't feel very much, but as soon as you have any kind of larger distance to measure things over, then you could actually tell that there was a gravitational field.
So when people are floating, when we see the pictures of the astronauts on the space station or on the shuttle when they're floating, is that because they're falling? Is that why they do that?
Because you're literally, when you're orbiting the Earth, you are falling around the Earth, right? It's just that your movement around the Earth is far enough that as you come down vertically, you keep on going round in a circle. Little bit sort of like move this far, come down, move this far, come down, because obviously the surface of the Earth falls away with distance, right? And so an orbit is literally just doing that and having it synced perfectly.
So somebody that doesn't do well on, like, say, roller coasters, do you feel that in your stomach when you're falling, or is that the gravity that you feel when you get that motion sickness?
So that's different. When you're on a roller coaster, you're going to feel amplified and reduced depending upon whether you're going up and going down.
Right, but you get when you just that feeling in your gut when you're falling.
So when you're just going off the sort of top and you're accelerating really, really fast, like if it was completely vertical, then I'd say, like the drop rides.
Right.
Those, you're going into zero gravity as soon as you get dropped in those. With the there's air resistance, so it won't quite be perfect, but those things are close enough to getting into zero gravity.
And that's how they simulate it in the aircraft when they
right?
The plane's actually going down.
It's going down at the same rate as gravity, so you're feeling zero gravity because of that. Yeah,
must be a weird feeling.
It is weird. Like a lot of people, it's called a vomit comet for a reason. It's not a nice feeling. It takes time to get used to it. And so there's a senator. This is. I don't want to say this is funny because that gentleman had a really bad time. But there was a senator who was part of a review committee for NASA, Senator Gahn. And they basically, he was quite critical, and so eventually he got a ride up. And when he went up, he was so space sick, right? He literally couldn't do anything. He was constantly sick. So now when they measure space sickness, they do it on the Gahn scale.
He'll last forever that way.
Right, yeah, exactly. So that's quite the story. That some people really do have a struggle to adjust to zero gravity. Yeah.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Science Files continues after the news. Welcome back. This is Science Files. He's Dr. Rob Thacker, here to answer your science-related questions. Good questions this week, Dr. Rob.
Yeah, great.
Pretty good. Let's go right back to the phone lines and welcome Glenn to the show. Glenn, how are you?
How are you?
Good. Your question. Are you there? Glenn, are you there? You hung up on me, Glenn. Call back. We'll see if we can get you back on the air. I could hear you. You just couldn't hear us. There's the science of telephones, Dr. Rob.
Sometimes they work. Sometimes they don't.
Yeah. David, how are you?
Good day, sir. It's the David Show.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, David Show, what's your question?
Dave, number 3.
Now, whenever we have, I don't know how often it happens, but every time when the moon gets close to the Earth, wouldn't there be a gravitational pull?
Are you thinking along the lines of the tides?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're always feeling the moon's influence. I think you got to remember that. It's always there. And so where the moon is will determine how strong the tide is. Like as I think we've mentioned this a couple of times before. If the sun and the moon line up, so either when you have a new moon or a full moon, then their two gravitational fields are working in concert with one another to create stronger tides, right? So you'll get stronger tides when you have a new moon or a full moon, right? And the other times, when the moon is off to the sort of like side, as it were, relative to the sun, then you're going to have weaker tides, right? And that's always happening. That's always there all the time. Yeah.
Okay. Now, another part, on the Facebook page, I've got to beware on this that there's a parrot that talks Wouldn't that be AI? It's called Larry the Bird, and he's got a thing with the cops.
He's got
it's very hilarious, but I was just wondering that would AI be involved with that?
I mean, I don't quite know if you're saying would AI be able to create a sort of talking bird movie? Well, absolutely, right? That's more than a possibility, right?
But you can also teach parrots a lot of things. That
I mean, we all know there are talking parrots, right? I mean, yeah.
They
sure.
And some of them can be quite rude. In fact, very quickly, before we get to our next call, we were at the Westin a couple weeks ago, and somebody came up. Many people came up to say hi, and I was totally grateful for that. And somebody came up and shared a story about Rick Howe and his parrot, for whatever reason, would listen with him to the Rick Howe show, and picked up Rick Howe and would say it, and when Rick would come onto the radio and do his "Good morning, everybody," the parrot would start going, "Rick Howe, Rick Howe, Rick Howe." I felt sorry for that family.
I would love to have seen that. Sorry, that is such a wonderful story. I would love to have seen
right?
that. Yeah.
It's amazing what those birds can pick up. Anyway, David, I appreciate it. Let's see if we can squeeze one more call in here, and we'll get Carl on the air. Carl, how are you?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Very well, thank you.
It's on your mind?
Lots of stuff. In my opinion, honestly, we don't belong in space. We've talked about this in the past. Honestly, there's too much space junk up there already, too many satellites. We used to go, we'd see a rocket launch at Cape Canaveral. Now it's like they launch one every other week. I mean,
you're absolutely right. That's very true.
It's too much. I believe it's punching holes through the ozone layer. It's just not good. It's a waste of money. Here's my greatest fear. Oh, by the way, a jetliner had their windshield get cracked in flight, and they believe it was some space junk that was falling that hit the plane that caused that.
Somebody else emailed me on that today too, Dr. Rob. Apparently it was like 30,000 feet in the air or something.
So here's the thing, right? That people are concerned about the possibility of when we have a re-entry risk. So when China had their booster coming back down, that actually forced France and Italy to close a corridor of airspace. So people do worry about this seriously. There's sooner or later, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's a finite probability that something like this will happen, for sure.
Yeah, what are the chances, right? But here's the other thing. I don't know if this is true or not, but I saw it on YouTube. They're saying that the Chinese space station discovered that they have bacteria growing on the space station that's unknown to man. My greatest fear is something's going to come back to our planet from space and wipe out all of humanity, worse than the bubonic plague or anything we've ever seen. And that's
Star Trek episode,
that's a real concern of mine, you know?
Okay, so I do get your concerns there, and I completely understand why you have them. I would just sort of say the one thing that we need to remember is that there are just an enormous number of unknown bacteria on the Earth anyway. We don't have close to understanding all of the species of bacteria on the Earth.
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it. Have a good day. I don't know if it's true, but I saw it on YouTube. What does that do to a scientific mind?
I don't know if it's true, but I saw it on YouTube. That's it's dangerous. Like, if you love the sort of like entertainment value, I get it. Right. There's a lot of fun.
I'm not taking a shot at Carl at all, but it's something that I know we hear a lot is that people pick stuff up off of YouTube and it creates some concern within people's brains.
Yeah, no, and like one of the things that always sort of like blows my mind is the videos that go around of like the size of the planets at the conjunction and things like that, and it makes it look like these things are going to be like several degrees across the sky, and no, they're not. They're only points of light. So yeah, you've got to be careful with what you consume on YouTube. There's no question about it.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Thanks for the call, Carl. 902-405-6000. Or 1-877-801-8255. Dr. Rob, you sent me. Rob always sends me an article in advance of the show to probably to spur along my imagination more than anything else.
Or to gross the listeners out, one of the two.
But this one, like this, I'm going home and throwing out my toothbrush.
Yeah, so this one is actually from the BBC. It's like, your toothbrush is bristling with bacteria. Is it time to change it, Dan?
Uh-oh.
So I'm... I've got to seeing this one, I had to read it. And so people always get concerned when you talk about bacteria. And so, yes, bacteria are all around us and they can do very bad things to you, right? That's quite true. But there's also an enormous number of bacteria that do positive things for us as well. So we need to get that into perspective. And so it won't be a surprise to anyone, right, that when you have your loo in your bathroom and you're putting something in your mouth, right, and cleaning with it, that actually, no, your toothpaste doesn't clean all of the bacteria off all of the bristles, right? And so there are bacteria living on your toothbrush, right? But the reality of this, and I think someone has actually comments on this further down in the article, you've been living with that for years,
right?
Right? So you're quite accustomed to it. If you want to say what is the outcome of that, then yes, there may be some transfer of bad bacteria at one point or another. That is actually a possibility, right? Particularly staphylococci and so on, right? So those are the things that typically give us food poisoning and streptococci and as well. So you've just got to be careful, but it's a bathroom. You should be cleaning your bathroom, right, on a fairly regular basis. When you flush your loo, keep the lid down, right? That makes sense too. But otherwise, if I was going to say anything, maybe I wouldn't go sharing toothbrushes too often, right? That's probably a transfer issue.
Well, the human mouth is a dirty place, right?
It is, yeah. It absolutely is, right? So yeah, and if you're really, 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 really concerned about this, you can clean your toothbrush with vinegar if you really want to, but I don't.
I put vinegar on my French fries, not on my toothbrush.
So it's something to be aware of, right? But at the end of the day, a lot of these bacteria are in your system as well. So again, if you have, don't put your toothbrush next to the toilet if you can avoid it. Right?
Or use it to clean it.
Well, definitely, yes.
That brings back a flashback or two.
Yeah, and I don't want to think about that. Thank you very much.
Dr. Rob, I got a quick email question here about, we were talking about comets earlier, and apparently there's a couple of them that are very close by or that we can see. One's called Lemon, I think, and the other one's Swan.
Yeah, so these are the brightest we've had this year, but I mean, they're not going to be very bright, right? So they're not really going to be naked eye objects, although if you get out into a very sort of like away from the city, then you may be able to see them, right? But really, they're not that bright. Magnitude 4.5 and 5.9, the astronomers listening will know that they're not particularly bright. So if you want any chance to see them, then yeah, get out away from the city lights, and then you might just, especially if you take a pair of binoculars and you know where to look, can't possibly tell you where to look easily, better to show people, but so you can Google it, you can find a place, and then binoculars, 10 by 50 binoculars are a really good way to look for these things, or even 8 by 40s if you want a little wider view, that's a good way to look for them as well. So I totally recommend binoculars for looking at comets.
Our time is up again. Once again, Dr. Rob.
Oh, that was a great show.
Great questions this week.
Telescopes on the moon. Yes, make it happen.
If there's two things that get that Christmas presents for Dr. Rob, telescopes on the moon and black holes.
Absolutely, and I'm not even going to say the punchline to that one. Thanks for the great questions, everyone.
Black holes don't suck. No. Dr. Rob is back next Tuesday for your weekly edition of Science Files. Well, that's going to do it, everybody. Just so everybody is on the same page, the Blue Jays and the Dodgers, Game 1, Friday night, 9 o'clock. You'll catch it here on 95.7 News Radio, and we will have them being the games, right through the World Series. And I do truly hope that you listen to a game just once. Even if you turn the TV on, it's a little bit weird because there's a delay, but I just love listening to it. And I think it is nostalgia, to be honest. I think it's just the days of yesteryear when I was a youngster and I used to have that radio under the pillow and you could listen to the ball game. It just, for me, is the best way to take in a ball game. Anyway, Friday night, 9 o'clock, right here on the station. Thanks to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of the glass for doing everything that she does to keep things in an orderly fashion. Not an easy job most days. Be well, everybody, and remember, be kind to one another. right, welcome back. This is Science Files. He's Dr. Rob Thacker here to answer your science-related questions. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. And we welcome Dave to the show. Dave, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. And thank you for taking my call again,
sure.
Dan. Now, Rob, I'm just wondering,
now,
a question
Dave.
for you is, have we, have we had, Rob?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not too sure if I'm picking you up. I'm just mobile right now. But
Sure.
have we as humans sent anything beyond our solar system? Is there anything that has exited our solar system as yet?
Yeah, so, I mean, the Voyagers have. Right? I mean, it depends. You got to be careful about how you define the edge of the solar system as well. That's not a trivial thing to do. But yes, the Voyagers are out there.
So not far past there. And they were sent
That's
how
right.
many years ago?
77.
How many years ago? Oh, my goodness, that's a long time.
Yeah.
So really, that just tells you how small, I guess, our solar system is.
Mm-hmm.
Just to exit our solar system, it does kind of make me wonder why we're putting so much resources and cost into even, and I don't believe there's a planet, Rob, in our system, or moon, maybe, that is habitable. My understanding is there is either gas or temperatures that are beyond.
Well, Mars is habitable.
Human.
Well, no, I think so. So Dave's point is there anywhere else we can go where we could just plop people down and breathe?
Right.
And the answer
Right.
to that is no. Right? Absolutely not.
Yeah, and Mars is not going to be exactly welcoming either. We're going to have to do a lot of things to be able
You're
to
absolutely
live
right. Yep.
on Mars or under the ground. And you were just saying yourself, the moon is the closest, 200 some odd thousand miles, really close. But that's not a very comforting place to reside either, is it?
No.
Okay, and so on top of this, I guess I'm getting to is we have had a comet enter our an interstellar comet. I think it's the Atlas 3. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So I know there's a lot of talk and social media and whatever you get on YouTube. A lot of people are talking about how irregular this. If it is a comet, it has some habits that don't look like a comet, and it's coming in almost like near every planet or by most of our planets. And I want your take on what you think that is. It is a big topic, and it must be in a big topic of science because I hear it all the time, this thing. Is it just a distraction of some sort, or is this could be something that is alien-like, maybe?
Who's driving the comet?
Okay. So,
well, the thing. Can I just? I was watching a program, and I was just looking at how the size of our solar system, or for that matter, the size of our Earth, when it comes to our galaxy. We are a needle in the haystack. Nothing really, and our galaxy is one of many in a cluster of galaxies, which is again in the universe of things. It's so vast.
Okay.
I just wonder, what are we doing? Why are we even bothering? I guess we wouldn't be over here if it wasn't for Columbus or what have you, but is there any chance of something being out there examining us?
Okay.
Maybe that's my question. Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
Let's back up a little bit, right? So everything that David said about the size of the solar system, spot on, right? The solar system, in the context of the size of our overall galaxy, in the context of how far apart stars are on average, is absolutely right. The solar system is very, very small. But here's the counter argument. There's a lot of stars. There's a lot of material in solar systems that as those planetary systems are forming, there's a fairly high probability that some of that is going to get ejected. And so if there's a lot of it, right, the idea that we are just sort of like really lucky to have one of these things come through is not actually accurate. There are a lot of these things that get flung out of planetary systems that are forming. So we think there's actually a whole sort of like swath of these things that are flying through different parts of the space in the galaxy. And so that's what we've got to remember. And so now we've seen 3 of them ourselves coming close by to us, but we think we're going to see even more once we have the Rubin telescope fully on, taking lots more data and so on over the next few years. And so most of the estimates that people have done for how many of these things we would expect aren't actually not too far off what we've seen. So actually, we really do kind of think that the statistics on this is reasonably accurate. Right. Now, with all of that said, what is the probability that one of these things is, and so Dr. Avi Loeb has brought this up again, is some kind of piece of technology coming from another civilization? that unfortunately obviously has to be a much lower probability, right? And so the fact that we can see 3I Atlas, it looks like a comet, it does cometary things, it has slightly unusual acceleration behaviors and so on. But for me, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it probably is a duck, right? Whereas, yes, should we consider the outside possibility that it is a piece of alien technology and so on? Okay, but I don't think you're going to get a lot of traction on that overall. Right. Now, the question then becomes, what should we do about looking for alien technologies and so on, and alien technologies that come close by? Avi Loeb is obviously a huge proponent for this. Most people in the field quite honestly disagree with Avi and say the probability of that is so low, it is not worth our time expending money on it, right? And that's literally people's positions. Avi says we've got a lot of money, so we should look at everything, right? I'm not at the moment on any funding committees to make a decision like that, quite thankfully. But personally, with 3I Atlas, for me, I think there's a fairly large amount of evidence that this is something that looks like a regular comet. Now, there are unusual things, like the amount of CO2 that's being emitted from it. That's a little bit unusual and so on. But those are fun things. They tell us about potentially the nature of the asteroid formation in other planetary systems, right? But when we only get one, that's really hard to use as a piece of evidence. Anyway, so yeah, great question, Dave. But for me, is this something of alien origin? I don't think there's much evidence for that. Should we look for those things? Yeah, okay, sure.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate the call. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Pat to the show. Pat, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you for taking my call. Good afternoon, guys. I just have a quick question, I guess, or your thought on the electric sun model, and if that's been debunked or if that's a real thing or not.
Well, do you want to tell me what the electric sun model is?
That it's actually producing electricity from the stellar corona. Is that right, or does that sound right?
Hold on. So I've just, because I've never heard of this, so I've done what I normally do when I've never heard of something. I've done a very quick Google, and I don't know whether I can trust this because it's an AI overview. But the electric sun model is a pseudoscientific hypothesis that proposes the sun is powered by electric currents from the galaxy rather than by nuclear fusion. So if that's what it is, I mean, the thing to remember is there are very, very strong magnetic fields in the sun that arise quite naturally out of the plasmas that make it up, right? So there's definitely electrical things going on within the sun, but is it powered by electrical currents that come from the gravity? I mean, the long and the short answer is no, because you can obviously see there isn't a flow of energy to the sun. There's a flow of energy from the sun outwards, right? And so that's the key thing for me.
Okay. Yeah, no, I read it somewhere online somewhere, so I don't know how true it was. So
yeah. I mean, I would. So here's the thing, right? I mean, I would totally support people sort of like understanding that magnetic processes are very important, especially on the surface of the sun. That's how we get the solar wind from sunspots and sudden solar flares and so on. That's all about the magnetic energy that's being released. So there is definitely an electrical or magnetic component to the behavior of the sun, but the idea that there's electric currents from the galaxy, no. Yeah.
Pat, appreciate the call. Have a good one. 902-405-6000 is the number, 1-877-801-8255. We're going to take a break. Science Files continues on the other side.